Authority Unknown, Part 1. The Stop. The red dust of Mars swirled around Patrol Vehicle 247 as Officers Thompson and Martinez conducted their routine evening patrol through Precinct 17's Upper District. The wealthy area gleamed with its transparent dome overhead, protecting the luxurious buildings from the harsh Martian atmosphere. "Another quiet night," Thompson said, leaning back in his seat. His hand absently brushed against the plasma pistol at his hip, a habit formed over 5 years of service in the Mars Colony Police Force. Martinez nodded, his eyes fixed on the holographic displays floating above the vehicle's dashboard. The screens showed various data streams, vehicle registrations, citizen IDs, and atmospheric conditions. But what caught his attention was a sleek black transport vehicle turning onto their street. "Hold up," Martinez said, sitting straighter. "Getting some interesting readings from that transport up ahead." His fingers danced through the air, manipulating the holographic controls to enhance the scan. Thompson leaned forward, suddenly alert. "What kind of readings?" "Passenger's biosignature shows Earth origin. African territories, specifically." Martinez's voice carried a hint of suspicion. "Pretty unusual for this district, wouldn't you say?" Thompson smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Very unusual. Better run a full check. You know how many illegal immigrants try to sneak into the Mars colonies these days." The patrol vehicle's engines hummed to life as Thompson guided it behind the transport. With a few quick gestures, he activated the emergency lights, sending pulses of blue and red reflecting off the dome above. The transport, a latest model Mercury GT, pulled over smoothly. Its dark windows were tinted to the legal limit, exactly to the limit, according to their scans, but Thompson would make sure to mention it anyway. Any excuse for a more thorough inspection. "Central, this is Unit 247, Martinez spoke into his comm unit. "Conducting a routine stop on a suspicious vehicle in Sector 8. Registration number MCT 2045X. The response came back immediately, the AI dispatcher's voice crisp and clear. "Acknowledged, Unit 247. Registration shows vehicle is properly licensed and current on all inspections. No flags or warnings." Thompson unbuckled his restraints. "Well, let's see what we've got here. Keep the body cam running just in case." Both officers stepped out into the climate-controlled street. The transparent dome above them showed the Martian sky, where Phobos was just visible, a tiny dot against the dusty orange backdrop. Their boots clicked against the polished street surface as they approached the transport, one on each side. Thompson tapped the driver's side window with his knuckles, perhaps a bit harder than necessary. The window hummed as it lowered, revealing a woman in her mid-40s. She sat perfectly still, her hands visible on the steering controls. Her business attire was impeccable, a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than Thompson made in a month. "License and registration," Thompson said, not bothering with the usual pleasantries. His eyes narrowed as he studied her face, noting her Earth features, the darker skin tone that marked her as someone from the African territories. The woman reached slowly toward the glove compartment. "Of course, officer. May I ask why I'm being stopped?" "Window tint looks excessive," Martinez said from the passenger side. "And our scanners picked up some unusual readings. Just being thorough, you understand. This is a restricted district." The woman's expression remained neutral as she handed over her documentation chip. "I see. And these unusual readings, would they have anything to do with my place of origin?" Thompson's jaw tightened. "Ma'am, we're just doing our job. There's been an increase in illegal immigration lately, especially from the Earth sectors. We have to be vigilant." "Of course," she replied, her voice calm and measured. "Please conduct your inspection. I wouldn't want to interfere with proper police procedure." Something in her tone made Thompson pause, but he pushed the feeling aside. He inserted the documentation chip into his scanner, hoping, really to find something out of order. The familiar rush of adrenaline filled him, the thrill of possibly catching someone who didn't belong in his district. Little did Thompson know, but this routine stop was about to change not just his career, but the entire Mars Colony police force forever. Authority Unknown, Part 2: The Encounter. Officer Thompson's scanner beeped as it processed the woman's documentation chip. The sound echoed in the quiet street, mixing with the low hum of the transport's idle engine. His partner, Martinez, kept his position at the passenger side, hand resting casually on his plasma pistol. "Step out of the vehicle, please," Thompson ordered, his voice carrying that special tone of authority he reserved for situations like this. "Standard procedure." The woman raised an eyebrow but complied smoothly. Her movements were deliberate and calm as she emerged from the transport. She stood tall, taller than Thompson had expected, and carried herself with unmistakable confidence. Her suit was even more expensive looking up close, with subtle threads of smart fabric that adjusted to Mars' artificial atmosphere. "Is there a problem with my documentation, Officer Thompson?" she asked, noting his name displayed on his uniform's digital badge. Thompson frowned at her composed demeanor. Most people showed at least a little nervousness during stops, but this woman seemed completely unruffled. "Just conducting a thorough check, ma'am. We have to be careful in this district. Lots of people trying to access areas where they don't belong." Martinez moved closer, his scanner running additional checks on her biometrics. "You're registered as Dr. Roberts?" he asked, emphasizing the title with slight disbelief. "And what brings a doctor from Earth's African territories to our prestigious Mars Colony district?" "Yes, I'm Dr. Roberts," she replied, her voice carrying a hint of amusement that made both officers shift uncomfortably. "And I have business in this district. Important business, actually." Thompson's scanner finally completed its extended analysis. Everything was perfectly in order, suspiciously so, in his mind. "These credentials look very high quality, ma'am. Almost too high quality." "Are you suggesting my documentation is forged, Officer Thompson?" Dr. Roberts asked, her tone unchanged but her eyes sharpening slightly. "I'm suggesting that we get a lot of sophisticated forgeries these days," Thompson replied, trying to regain control of the situation. "Earth refugees are getting better at duplicating Mars Colony credentials." Martinez nodded, adding, "You understand our concern. This is an exclusive district. We have to maintain certain standards." Dr. Roberts clasped her hands behind her back, looking up at the dome above them. The Martian sunset painted the sky in deep oranges and reds, casting long shadows across the street. "Standards," she repeated thoughtfully. "And what standards would those be, exactly?" Thompson felt his face grow warm. "Listen, ma'am, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. We're going to need to verify these credentials back at the station." "Are you detaining me, Officer Thompson?" Dr. Roberts asked, her voice still frustratingly calm. "We're conducting an investigation," Martinez cut in. "For the safety of our district." A gentle breeze from the atmospheric processors ruffled Dr. Roberts' suit as she stood there, studying both officers. Her next words came slowly, deliberately. "And this investigation, would you be conducting it if I were from the European territories? Or perhaps the Asian colonies?" Thompson's face reddened further. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to watch your tone. We're authorized to use whatever means necessary to protect this district from unauthorized persons." "Interesting choice of words," Dr. Roberts said. She reached into her pocket, making both officers tense. "Perhaps we should discuss authorization. Hands where we can see them." Martinez barked, his hand tightening on his weapon. Dr. Roberts slowly withdrew her hand, holding what looked like another credentials chip. This one was different. It had the distinctive platinum sheen of high-level colonial authority. Officers, I think it's time we had a conversation about proper police procedure in Precinct 17. Thompson's scanner suddenly lit up with new information, data streaming across its surface too fast for him to process. His eyes widened as certain words began to stand out: Chief Administrator, Command Level Alpha, Colonial Law Enforcement Division. The evening air seemed to grow thicker as realization began to dawn on both officers' faces. They had just made a terrible, career-changing mistake. Authority Unknown, Part 3. The Documentation. The platinum credentials chip hung in the air between Dr. Roberts and the officers like a small sun catching the last rays of Martian sunset. Thompson's scanner continued to flash warning after warning, each one making his stomach sink lower. There must be some mistake, Martinez said, his voice barely above a whisper. His own scanner was showing the same alerts: maximum security clearance, command authority, direct oversight powers. Dr. Roberts smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. No mistake, officers. Though I must say, you've provided an illuminating welcome to my new precinct. Thompson's mind raced as he tried to remember the morning briefing. There had been something about a new chief arriving, but he'd been too busy planning his patrol route through the suspicious areas to pay attention. Now that same briefing was replaying in his neural implant's memory cache, crystal clear and damning. Chief Administrator, Thompson stammered. We didn't. No? Dr. Roberts finished for him. Clearly. Though I'm curious about what you didn't know, or rather, what you thought you knew when you decided to stop my vehicle. The street had grown quieter, if that was possible. Even the usual hum of the atmospheric processors seemed muted. A few passers-by had slowed their walks, sensing the tension in the air. Standard procedure, Martinez tried weakly. The window tint was exactly at legal levels. Dr. Roberts cut him off. As your own scanners showed. Shall we review the real reason for this stop? Your scanner logs should be quite interesting. Thompson felt sweat beading on his forehead despite the climate controls. The scanner logs would show everything: their initial biosignature scan, their comments about Earth refugees, every single flagged moment of prejudice carefully recorded by their own equipment. Chief Administrator, Thompson began again, if we could just explain. Dr. Roberts raised her hand, silencing him. Officer Thompson, in the past 20 minutes you have conducted an unnecessary stop based on racial profiling, attempted to intimidate a law-abiding citizen, suggested valid credentials were forged without evidence, and implied that certain people don't belong in this district based solely on their Earth origin. She turned to Martinez. And you, Officer Martinez, supported these actions while maintaining a threatening posture with your hand on your weapon throughout the encounter. All of this is recorded, of course. Your body cams have been transmitting to Central Command since the moment you activated your lights. Both officers stood frozen, their careers flashing before their eyes. The platinum chip in Dr. Roberts' hand caught another glint of light as she turned it slowly. Did you know, she continued, her voice taking on a lecturer's tone, that this district has the highest rate of suspicious person stops in the entire Mars colony? Interesting statistics, especially when broken down by the Earth origin of those stopped. We were just trying to protect the district, Martinez offered weakly. Protect it from what, exactly? Dr. Roberts asked, her voice sharp but controlled. From qualified professionals? From legal residents? From your new chief administrator? A small crowd had gathered at a respectful distance, their own neural implants probably recording everything. Tomorrow, this would be all over the colony's social networks. Your documentation, Thompson said suddenly, desperately. It's very high level. We needed to verify. My documentation, Dr. Roberts said, includes command codes that your scanners recognized instantly. Codes you chose to ignore while you continued your harassment. Would you like to explain that decision to the Colonial Review Board? Both officers paled. The review board had ended careers for far less than this. However, Dr. Roberts continued, sliding the platinum chip back into her pocket, I believe this presents an opportunity. One that we're going to discuss in detail when I officially take command tomorrow morning. I expect both of you in my office at 800 hours. We're going to have a very long conversation about proper police procedure, implicit bias, and the future of law enforcement in Precinct 17. She turned back to her transport, then paused. Oh, and officers? Don't bother updating your reports about this stop. I've already archived the original versions. Consider this your first lesson in transparency under my command. The transport's door closed behind her with a soft hiss, leaving Thompson and Martinez standing in the growing Martian darkness, their world forever changed. Authority Unknown, Part 4. The Office Meeting. At precisely 800 hours the next morning, Officers Thompson and Martinez stood outside the Chief Administrator's office in Precinct 17's headquarters. The transparent walls of the outer office showed the Martian landscape stretching far beyond the dome, its red emptiness a stark contrast to their churning emotions. Maybe she'll just fire us, Thompson muttered, adjusting his uniform for the 10th time. He hadn't slept all night, reviewing the incident over and over in his neural implant's memory cache. Martinez shook his head. That would be easier. Did you see the look in her eyes? She's planning something worse. The office door slid open with a soft whoosh. Dr. Roberts sat behind a desk that was still mostly empty. She hadn't had time to properly move in yet. A single hollow display floated above her desk, showing what looked like police statistics. Come in, officers, she said, not looking up from the display. Please take a seat. They sat in the chairs facing her desk, trying not to fidget. The chairs were comfortable, which somehow made things worse. I've been reviewing your service records, Dr. Roberts began, finally looking at them. Both of you have impressive arrest records. High conviction rates. Multiple commendations for bravery. Thompson felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad. I've also been reviewing your stop statistics, she continued, her voice hardening. Would you care to guess what pattern emerged? Neither officer spoke. Dr. Roberts made a gesture, and the hollow display expanded, filling the air between them with floating data points. In the past year, you've conducted 847 suspicious person stops. Of those, 92% involved individuals from Earth's African or Asian territories. Care to explain that disparity? Those areas have higher crime rates, Martinez said automatically, then immediately regretted speaking. Wrong, Dr. Roberts replied sharply. Colonial statistics show no significant difference in crime rates based on Earth origin. What they do show is a significant bias in enforcement. A bias you too have exemplified. She stood up, walking around her desk. Let me tell you what's going to happen now. First, you're both being reassigned. Thompson's heart sank. Reassignment usually meant traffic duty on the outer dome. To the new Cultural Integration Unit, Dr. Roberts continued, which you will help me create. Both officers blinked in surprise. You'll maintain your ranks and pay, she explained, leaning against her desk. But instead of patrol duties, you'll be working directly with new Earth immigrants, helping them adjust to Mars colony life. You'll learn their stories, understand their challenges, and help them navigate our systems. Chief Administrator, Thompson started, but she held up a hand. I'm not finished. You'll also undergo comprehensive bias recognition training. And here's the interesting part, you'll then help design and lead similar training for the entire precinct. Martinez looked confused. You want us to teach? I want you to learn, Officer Martinez. And then I want you to help others learn from your mistakes. She smiled, but there was steel behind it. Who better to teach about the dangers of prejudice than officers who've confronted their own bias? The hollow display shifted, showing new data. Your body cam footage from last night will be part of the training program. Every officer in this precinct will see how quickly standard procedure can become discrimination. They'll also see how that discrimination nearly cost 2 decorated officers their careers. Thompson felt his face burning. You're not firing us? No, Officer Thompson. Firing you would be easy. Making you part of the solution, that's much more valuable. She walked to the window, looking out at the Martian landscape. This colony represents humanity's future. We left Earth to build something better, not to bring our old prejudices with us. She turned back to them. You have a choice. Accept this assignment, work to change not just yourselves but the entire precinct culture, or resign. What's it going to be? Thompson and Martinez looked at each other. A moment of understanding passed between them. We'll do it, Thompson said quietly. We'll help make things right. Dr. Roberts nodded. Good. Because trust me, officers, this is going to be the hardest assignment of your careers. Changing minds, including your own, is never easy. She sat back down at her desk. Now, let's talk about your first assignment in the Cultural Integration Unit. Authority Unknown, Part 5. The first day. 3 days after their meeting with Chief Administrator Dr. Roberts, Officers Thompson and Martinez stood nervously in front of the Mars Colony Welcome Center. The building's curved walls sparkled in the morning sun filtering through the dome, and a steady stream of new arrivals from Earth moved through its doors. I still can't believe this is our new assignment, Martinez said, watching a family from the African territories struggle with their luggage. His hand twitched toward their direction, old habits of suspicion dying hard before he forced it back to his side. Thompson nodded, understanding the gesture. Remember what the chief said. We're here to help, not enforce. Their uniforms felt different today. Dr. Roberts had ordered them modified, the intimidating black replaced with friendly blue, weapon holsters removed, and new badges that read Cultural Integration Unit instead of Patrol Division. Welcome to Mars Colony, Thompson said as the family approached, surprising himself with how genuine he sounded. Can we help you with those bags? The father hesitated, looking at their uniforms with obvious concern. Thompson recognized that look. He'd seen it hundreds of times before during his stops, but now it made him uncomfortable in a different way. It's okay, Martinez added quickly, showing his empty hands. We're here to help new arrivals adjust to the colony. May we know your name, sir? James Wilson, the man replied cautiously. These are my wife Rachel and our daughter Lisa. Thompson smiled, remembering the cultural sensitivity training they'd crashed through over the past 2 days. Mr. Wilson, we're part of a new program to help Earth families transition to Mars life. Would you like assistance setting up your colonial documentation and finding your assigned housing? The family's surprise at their helpful attitude was obvious. As Thompson helped with their bags and Martinez began explaining the colony's transit system, their neural implants recorded everything for later review by Dr. Roberts. Inside the Welcome Center, more new arrivals filled the space. Thompson noticed how his old instincts tried to categorize them by Earth origin, but now he forced himself to see them differently as people, each with their own stories and dreams of a better life on Mars. Officer Thompson, a small voice called. He turned to see Lisa Wilson looking up at him. Is it true there are parks inside the dome where we can play? Absolutely, he replied, pulling up a hollow map. In fact, there's one near your new home. Would you like to see? As he showed the excited girl the map, Martinez was helping Rachel Wilson navigate the colony's healthcare registration system. The change in their approach was dramatic. Where once they would have viewed these people with suspicion, now they found themselves genuinely wanting to help. Later that afternoon, during their break, Thompson's neural implant chimed with a message from Dr. Roberts. Reviewed your morning interactions. Good progress. Remember, every positive encounter helps erase years of negative experiences. She's watching everything we do, Martinez said, getting the same message. Good, Thompson replied, surprising himself again. Keeps us honest. They spent the rest of the day helping more families, an elderly couple from the Asian territories confused about the atmospheric controls in their new apartment, a young student from the African territories trying to enroll in the Mars University, and many others. Each interaction challenged their old prejudices and forced them to see beyond their preconceptions. As the artificial day cycle began to dim, simulating evening through the dome, Thompson and Martinez watched their last family of the day walk away, successfully settled into their new life on Mars. You know what's weird? Martinez said quietly. This feels better than making arrests. Thompson nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. We're actually helping people now. Really helping them. Their neural implants chimed again. Dr. Roberts had sent another message. Tomorrow you'll begin leading morning briefings for the patrol division. Share what you've learned today. Show them the difference between protecting and harassing. You're not just changing yourselves, you're helping change the entire system. Looking out at the Martian sunset, Thompson realized something important. Their punishment had become an opportunity, not just for them, but for the entire Mars colony. Maybe this was what real law enforcement should have been all along. Ready for tomorrow? He asked Martinez. No, his partner replied honestly. But I think that's the point. We're not supposed to be comfortable with this. We're supposed to grow. Authority Unknown, Part 6: The Change. 1 month into their new assignment, Thompson stood before a room full of patrol officers, his neural implant projecting his old body cam footage onto the briefing room's main screen. The footage showed him stopping a vehicle, one of many similar stops he'd made in his career. Watch my body language, he instructed his fellow officers. See how my hand stays on my weapon? How I approach assuming threat rather than assistance. This isn't protecting and serving. This is intimidation. In the back of the room, Martinez nodded encouragingly. They'd been taking turns leading these morning sessions, sharing their experiences and the lessons they'd learned. At first, the other officers had been resistant, even hostile. But gradually, things began to change. Now, Thompson continued, switching to footage from yesterday at the Welcome Center. Watch this interaction instead. The screen showed him helping a group of new arrivals, his posture open, hands visible, voice friendly. Same uniform, same authority, but used to help rather than frighten. Dr. Roberts sat quietly in the corner, observing. She'd attended every session, but rarely spoke, letting Thompson and Martinez find their own way to reach their fellow officers. Questions? Thompson asked, finishing his presentation. Officer Baker, a veteran patroller known for his high number of suspicious person stops, raised his hand. How do you handle security concerns? We can't just trust everyone. Good question, Thompson replied. We trust our training and technology, not our prejudices. Our scanners can detect actual threats. But look at our stats, how many of those stops actually found real threats? Less than 1%. We were creating fear, not preventing crime. After the briefing, Dr. Roberts called Thompson and Martinez to her office. The room had changed over the past month, now filled with charts tracking the precinct's progress, community feedback reports, and plans for expanding the cultural integration unit. Your morning sessions are having an impact, she said, bringing up a hollow display. Stop rates are down 60%, while community cooperation has increased 45%. Even crime reporting is up. People trust us more when we're not terrorizing them. It's still hard sometimes, Martinez admitted. Old habits die hard, Dr. Roberts finished. Yes, they do. But look at these numbers. She gestured, and new data appeared. Satisfaction ratings from new arrivals are at record highs. Your Welcome Center team has helped over 200 families transition successfully to colony life. That's real impact. Thompson studied the numbers. What about Officer Baker? He seemed interested today. He's requested transfer to your unit, Dr. Roberts smiled. Along with 5 other officers. Your example is spreading. The hollow display shifted to show plans for a new building. The Colonial Council has approved funding for an expanded integration center. They want to implement our program colony-wide. Your experiences, your transformation, will help change law enforcement across Mars. Martinez looked stunned. Colony-wide? Change has to start somewhere, Dr. Roberts said. Why not here? Why not with you? As they left her office, Thompson and Martinez paused to watch the flow of people through the main precinct area. Where once they would have seen threats and suspects, now they saw community members, families, people building new lives on a new world. Remember that first traffic stop? Thompson asked quietly. The one that almost ended our careers? Martinez chuckled. Hard to forget. I'm glad she didn't fire us, Thompson said. This is better. Harder, but better. Their neural implants chimed with new assignments, more families arriving, more officers to train, more chances to make a difference. The day ahead would be busy, challenging, but rewarding in ways their old patrol duties never were. Ready for another day of changing the system? Martinez asked. Thompson nodded, watching a family they'd helped last week walk confidently through the precinct doors, waving hello instead of shrinking away in fear. You know what? I actually am. As they headed to the Welcome Center, their modified uniforms standing out among the traditional patrol black, both officers realized how far they'd come from that fateful traffic stop. They weren't just enforcing the law anymore, they were helping build a better society, one interaction at a time. Dr. Roberts watched them go, allowing herself a small smile. Sometimes the best way to change a system wasn't to tear it down, but to transform it from within, one officer at a time. Authority Unknown, Part 7: The Legacy. 1 year after the traffic stop that changed everything, Precinct 17's main hall was packed with people. Officers in both traditional black and integration unit blue uniforms mingled with civilians from every Earth territory and Martian district. At the podium, Chief Administrator Dr. Roberts stood ready to address the crowd. Thompson and Martinez sat in the front row, their uniforms displaying new insignias. They were now directors of cultural integration training for the entire Mars Colony Police Force. Behind them sat dozens of officers they'd trained, including Officer Baker, who now led his own integration unit in Precinct 12. 1 year ago, Dr. Roberts began. A routine traffic stop exposed deep-rooted problems in our law enforcement system. Today, we celebrate how that moment of crisis became a catalyst for change. The hollow displays around the hall showed the statistics: complaints against officers down 85%, community cooperation up 90%, successful immigrant integration at record levels. But the numbers didn't tell the whole story. Real change, Dr. Roberts continued, isn't just about statistics. It's about people. It's about Officers Thompson and Martinez, who turned their mistake into a mission. It's about every officer who chose to change. And it's about every community member who gave us a chance to prove that change was real. In the audience, Thompson spotted James Wilson and his family, their first Welcome Center case. Lisa, now enrolled in the Mars Colony Academy, wore a junior cadet uniform. She waved at Thompson, who smiled back, remembering how far they'd all come. Today, Dr. Roberts announced the Colonial Council has approved the expansion of our program to every law enforcement precinct in the Sol system. Earth, Luna Base, and the asteroid belt stations will all implement the cultural integration model we developed here. The crowd applauded. Martinez leaned over to Thompson. Did you ever think that traffic stop would lead to this? Thompson shook his head. I thought it was the end of our careers. Instead, it was just the beginning. After the ceremony, Thompson and Martinez walked through the new integration center adjacent to the precinct. The building hummed with activity, new arrivals being welcomed, officers in training, community meetings in progress. Directors, Officer Baker called out, approaching with a new recruit. Got a minute? This officer had an interesting question about handling cultural differences in emergency situations. Thompson smiled, remembering when Baker had been one of the most resistant to change. Now he was one of their strongest advocates. Always time for questions, Martinez replied. That's how we learn. Their neural implants chimed with a message from Dr. Roberts. Your next assignment is ready. Earth's police academies want our training program. They're asking for you two specifically. Ready to take this show planet-side? Thompson looked at Martinez, both of them thinking the same thing. A year ago, they were patrolling one district, looking for people to stop. Now they had a chance to change law enforcement across the entire solar system. You know what this means, Martinez said. We're going home, but this time to help make it better. Their implants chimed again, this time with footage from that fateful night. Dr. Roberts had made sure they kept a copy, not as a punishment, but as a reminder. The contrast between their old selves and who they'd become was striking. Remember what you said that night? Thompson asked. Maybe she'll just fire us. Martinez laughed. Best thing that never happened to us. They watched a new group of arrivals being welcomed by their trained officers, no hands on weapons, no suspicion, just genuine help and respect. The fear that used to fill these halls had been replaced with hope. One traffic stop, Thompson mused. One moment of bias exposed. One leader who saw potential for change instead of just punishment. And now look, Martinez gestured at the bustling integration center. We're not just enforcing the law anymore. We're building bridges. Changing minds. Making a real difference. As they headed to their office to plan their Earth training program, Thompson paused to watch the Martian sunset through the dome. The red planet had taught them all a valuable lesson. Sometimes the biggest changes start with a single moment, a single decision to be better. Dr. Roberts had been right. Firing them would have been easy. Making them part of the solution that had changed everything.